Aftosmis. We are excited to spend some time with you today and share each of your perspectives on restarting travel and what's next. We know everyone has been really working hard behind the scenes to restart travel and adapt to the landscape and changes within your own businesses and work, while still connecting with your community and the travelers out there. All of you listening in, welcome. We hope to provide you with insights in our chat today on a post-COVID travel world, an all-inclusive and diverse travel landscape, what we can do to continue to travel sustainably, and what it looks like behind the scenes for these panel experts and travelers looking for answers. So before I hand it off to our host for today, owner and CEO of UnCruise Adventures, Captain Dan Blanchard, let's jump right into a quick introduction of our panel. Many of you may already know our panelists from their work in the travel community and their individual expertise. So a big shout out and thank you to Shannon Stowell, President of the Adventure Travel Trade Association, the largest professional organization for adventure travel trade companies. Jake Haupert, co-founder and chairman of the board of the Transformational Travel Council, a place for intentional travel. Jeannette, Ceja, journalist and TV host at Jet Set with Jeannette. Rick Saez, founder and host at the Outdoor Biz Podcast and the Podcasters Workshop. Imani Bashir, travel writer at Lifehacker and the author of the children's book series, Follow the Takeoff Toddler. She unfortunately won't be joining us this morning. She had some difficulties in Mexico, so we hope to catch her next time. We also have Bob Duglin, so hopefully he'll be joining us shortly, Vice President of International Expansion at the American Society of Travel Advisors, the largest association of travel professionals. Meghan Aftosmis, and I hope I'm saying that right, Aftosmis, PR and media lead at the Impact Travel Alliance, a global community of sustainable tourism. Judi, Cohen, travel writer and avid cruiser at Quirky Cruise, and Sarah Leonard, President and CEO of the Alaska Travel Industry Association, the lead in promoting Alaskan tourism and our valued travel partner. So let's go ahead and start the discussion. I'm going to kick this off to Dan, and we'll get started.
Liz, thank you very much. Great introduction. Panelists, wonderful to see you all. I don't know if I'll ever want to do Zoom meetings after this period in our lives, but I'm really happy to have you here right now. You know, part of today is opening up our world to this. So I think that, you know, I'm just going to encourage you in your responses and in your conversations, let's make it fun. We're in a fun industry. We deserve to share our positive outlook because what other option do we really have, right? And, you know, so as we go through this, don't be afraid to be a little snarky and fun. It's just who we are as an industry, and let's live up to who we are as people. We'll be going through a number of questions this morning. And we're going to start out with some a little rapid fire. Have y'all ever done a rapid fire? It's kind of fun. We just started it, and but you have 10 seconds, and the question is, and we're just going to go around and you respond as fast as you can. You have 10 seconds. The question is, quickly share the top hurdle you have been facing since the beginning of COVID-19. Take it off, Meghan.
Sure. I can still support local.
I'm not getting Meghan through, Liz.
Oop.
Meghan, could you repeat that? We kind of missed you, or I did anyway.
Sorry. Yeah, so for us, it's helping travelers understand how they can support locals and local tourism businesses in this kind of time of staying at home and traveling virtually.
Okay, I think you were at 9.5 seconds. You made it. Sarah.
All right.
I think I would say funding or financial support, which has been a big challenge for us and our businesses. But I would say however changing this is, I feel like daily things change and trying not to always be reactive.
Roger that. Rick.
For me, it's wading through all the issues and trying to keep up on the latest happenings around the world and adjust the questions for my guests. It's really changed some of the questions that I ask my guests and things we talk about. And keeping up on it is, as you all know, a daily effort.
And I'll get in one here. I would say it's like being in in a sea of quicksand, trying to find a place to step that is solid ground that we can base it on. And that for me is everything dealing with how we're going to start in Alaska 2020. Jake.
I'd say leading, being heart-centered, creating space for our community to be vulnerable, but keep energy high and keep it optimistic.
Awesome. Shannon.
Well, as the association, having the industry sort of grind to a halt has been very difficult for all of our members. And so we're really feeling their pain. And then all 5 of our events had to be initially canceled. And now we're moving to digital. Just having destinations close.
Yeah, roger that. We've all experienced that for sure. Jeannette.
I would say the traveler sentiment during this quarantine, and a lot of us are still on these stay-at-home orders and global lockdowns. So the number one question I get asked from the public is, when can I travel again? Or if they have trips already planned for the fall or winter, they're asking, should I cancel? Should I postpone? There's just a lot of uncertainty. So that's trying to go day by day, week by week, month by month.
Yeah, I hear you. Judi, your thoughts?
My greatest challenge really is dealing with wading through all the information that's coming in and trying to keep myself and other people that read all of our articles away from the negativity and staying positive. So it's really staying positive. And my personal challenge was I could not go to New York City for my son's wedding. He got engaged and wedded during COVID. So that was my personal challenge.
Wow, that's a biggie for sure.
Wow.
Well, isn't it interesting how all this is changing us as a people? And I think, I really appreciate the positive parts that all of you have brought up in that question or that answer, and taking care of ourselves, because we all have to take care of others and our staffs and all that kind of thing is such a real thing. When we look at adventure travel, which all of us are involved in one way or another, what category is, in my mind, adventure travel, let me rephrase that. Adventure travel is normally the category that takes off first. And I can look back to, the 9/11, I can look back to 2007 and 8 of the financial crisis, and the return to business for the travel industry often involved the adventure side first. And so I'm really curious your thoughts on that, and why is that happening? What's the mindset that allows adventure travel products to take off? Or is there something else out there that you feel may kind of go over that this time? Is there a sector that may open up sooner than later? Open question for all.
I have an initial reaction because I've been doing a lot of interviews with different media, so we've been talking about this a lot, and I think adventure travel lends itself well to opening up quicker because adventurous travelers are by definition more adventurous. I think also the pandemic has shown how, or people are thinking about what they're going to be traveling like, and so small group, open air, nature, healthy, family, and close friends, these all fit the bill for the future traveler. But I think the most subtle one, Dan, is I'm more and more I've been thinking about, and I'd love to hear other people's thoughts on this too, is that people who travel only for pleasure, I think that they are going to be slower to come back. People that travel for passion, whether you're an avid birder, expedition cruiser, hiker, climber, that is what defines you. And so you cannot wait to get back out there.
Yeah, I agree with that, Shannon. I think it's we look at it as a recreational activity. We do it to explore and to get out and see things and do things. We don't like to sit around. We're a pretty restless bunch, and since it is a recreational activity, we're doing it all the time, even locally. Just going for a hike. It's kind of an adventure travel trip.
I've done recently, I did a travel segment with ABC, and I've written a couple articles about what the latest trends are right now. And it is, like Shannon was saying, road trips, staycations, going within California. They just recently opened Joshua Tree, all the national parks slowly, and a lot of people are just getting in their cars or renting RVs and going just to get out, because in California and Los Angeles especially, we have been on this, strict stay safer at home order where they just reopen our beaches. So everything from adventure is, I think, definitely is like a very popular right now for travel.
Yeah, I'd say I'd agree with everybody as well. I think that you've got a couple different buckets for travelers. You've got the tourist buckets that they want to move, in their comfort zone. And so, whether you're going on a cruise or whether you're a beach cruise or you're going, to a place where touristed, you're essentially moving your comfort zone from point A to point B. Adventure travelers have always identified that you stretch, you go outside of your comfort zone, and that's where the adventure starts. That's when you start exploring the unknown. And so, it would make sense that adventure travelers are more comfortable with being uncomfortable. It's always been inherent risks. So now is just another opportunity to challenge yourself a little further.
And I agree with what everybody has said. And in terms of the adventure travelers, some of us are going to be limited within our own countries and within our own areas. And that should not limit adventure per se. If you're an adventurer, you will always be an adventurer. I, for one, and a number of our readers would love to be traveling more as soon as borders open and we are able to go back. And I don't think there's going to be anything that's going to be holding us back as long as we can get insurance.
Very true, Judi.
I'll just add one more comment to that and agree with what everyone has said, and in particular in Alaska, already being here, we're seeing some of that, Judi, and encouraging people to get out and explore their own backyard. I also think places that have those more rural settings or more adventure type settings, the adventure traveler is more will take that risk or do their research on how to get to those places, because that is part of the adventure. And coming to Alaska, if they are able to get to Alaska, we have those type of spaces and settings and environments where, as we're adapting in this pandemic, you can do social distancing, or you can have an adventure experience in a safer way.
So true. And Sarah, thanks for the local thing you and ATIA are doing to support travel inside Alaska. That's really been a great program. I would say from UnCruise Adventures standpoint, we are just kicking it right now with that, in the sense that we just announced we're going to open up on July 25th with a boat out of Juneau, and the response that we're getting from our guests is nothing less than amazing. The pent-up desire to travel and to adventure. I mean, they're adventurers. They're going to be the first that are going to lead the charge, just by name. And it's been really exciting to see, and we're looking forward to take off. We have space, by the way. Just want to let you know, we have space. Any other comments on adventure travel kind of leading the cutting edge here as we start up during and living with a pandemic?
I just want to add that even for me personally and professionally, during the pandemic is the longest I've ever been home ever in my life. And it's probably something a lot of us has been experiencing, working from home, living from home. And for me, cabin fever can be a real thing. So for me, I could not wait just to go anywhere, to the grocery market, to the post office, wherever. It was like a little adventure for me. So I'd walk around my neighborhood a different way, or any time I can get out. So I feel like as a collective, everybody is feeling this way. So everybody is an adventurer, in my opinion. And it's so much, it's going to be different, post-pandemic travel. I feel like everyone is going to just appreciate and want to travel even more. I mean, I feel that way for sure.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed and believing in that statement. Let's move on to our next question. What are the questions that guests and travelers that are thinking about, getting out there today? What are the questions they should be asking? What are the smart things they should ask about, in their travel choices as they choose to go forward, let's say even this summer. What questions should they be asking us, their companies they work with, and the travel advisors that they work with?
I can jump in there. I can jump in there. I would say that what we all need to do is map out our journey, like our full travel journey, and understand how every touch point is going to be affected, and whether we're going to be safe, how much time we need to allocate. Dare I say, a lot more of our vacation time is going to be spent on process, protocol, testing, screening, and all kinds of new things. So every touch point to a traveler will become important. From the morning or the afternoon or the evening you leave your home, to the time you get to the airport and you get on the aircraft, and every one of those touch points are ones that as travelers, we should be asking hard questions about the safety of every step along the journey, and as well as getting on a cruise ship, one of the small ships and one of the small boats. Ask the same points all along the way.
Yeah, I echo that. I was just going to say a lot of the local guides, mountain guides and backcountry ski guides and other outfitters around the U.S. I was talking to Aaron Bannon this week on my podcast, and he says that everybody's implementing unique protocol to maintain cleanliness of their equipment, cleanliness of their vans, all those things. So I think before you go on a trip, you're going to want to ask all those questions. What are you doing to keep your equipment clean, to keep the food healthy? They do a lot of that stuff anyway, but you want to just double check that this time, because this is a unique situation.
Yeah, I think from our perspective and my perspective, it is asking those deeper questions. How are you going to respond as a company should you have an outbreak? How are you going to respond should there be an individual that becomes sick and carry on? Those are really important questions for travelers to ask right now. I know in our case, we believe you have to be tested before you get on our boats. It's just because we want the freedom that testing brings. So getting the correct responses, guests and travelers, to those questions before you travel is really important. And I think it's critical today. I also believe that there's going to be, a lot more responsibility on the guest, because I think, none of us want to ever travel sick again, whether it's the common cold or not. That's a great change that's going to come about. But for the guest, I think part of that is also preparing for their trip a week in advance, reducing their exposure, this kind of thing. So I think it's kind of a two-edged sword on that one. There's what people should be asking of us and the right questions, but also what we should be asking of our guests.
Yeah, Dan, I couldn't agree with you more. I think that this is an opportunity for us to shift the paradigm a little bit and start asking the questions of the traveler. Why do you want to go? What are your motivations? Start to uncover and really support and serve them. I think if we're going to be more ethical and ecological, equitable with travel, we should be guiding the travelers through this process, understanding who they are, what their values, what their virtues are, look for that alignment, and then bring them through that process and make sure that we're nurturing that across that customer journey.
Jake, if I can add on to what you were saying too, I think we've been discussing a lot internally about just the ethical decisions around travel at this point. And it's not just about your safety, but the safety of where you're going, especially with a lot of the outdoors and adventure destinations going through Indigenous land and groups that are being disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So who are you putting kind of more at risk if you do something? Or are you supporting a local business or culture that's struggling right now? Can it be done in another way? I think we're kind of, there's individual.
Meghan, we just lost the last 10 seconds of your statement. Could you restate that? I think we lost Meghan for just a second.
I just was saying that, we're not looking at oh, can you hear me now?
Gotcha.
Okay. No, just saying that I think each case has to be looked at individually and kind of evaluated for what it is. There's not really a one size fits all.
I think just to echo Megan's comments. Couldn't agree more that I think more than ever, this has become a partnership between the business and the traveler, and that there should be personal responsibility when you're deciding to travel during a pandemic, for sure. But also I think it's the traveler's right, and they should be asking businesses, what are your mitigation plans? What communities are you going to visit? And what peoples may be affected, because it isn't just about the traveler, it is about the community, it is about your own teams. How often are you testing your staff and your team? Because I think the priority, and there's that balance there between wanting to open up and have business and support livelihoods, but also the priority of people's, and especially in rural areas, to what you were saying, Meghan, with, smaller populations or not a solid health infrastructure, could really be devastating for a community. So more than ever, I think on the positive side, it becomes that conversation and a partnership between the business and the community and the traveler.
It's interesting how these are all issues. I totally agree with all the comments just put forth, and these are all things we should have been taking more seriously in the past, but this pandemic really forced us to. Like now the stakes are very clear to everybody, whereas before maybe there was some laxness in how we viewed some of these issues, like visiting remote Indigenous communities that may not be able to recover from something we bring there.
That is so true. It's a new day where we're actually asking permission to go in places that we just assumed in the past we could always go, right? And that's building actually a new relationship that's really wonderful. I concur with all your statements. Any follow-ups on that question at all from anybody?
Dan, what you just said reminded me, we've been saying this since 2018 openly as the association, and now it feels like it'll be more acceptable for travelers to accept this, which is travel is not a right. It is a privilege. We are privileged when we get to go and be somewhere. And when we show up in a community, it's not our right to be there. We're not the kings and queens. We're the guests. So I think maybe this pandemic might turn that dial in the right direction. I'm hoping.
I believe so. Good words. Let's move on to our next question. And this is such a great one and so timely. Has your business goals, operations, et cetera, changed considering COVID-19 and Black Lives Matter? What is and what I'm talking about is has your direction of your company changed because of COVID-19? Has your organization changed because of Black Lives Matter, or is there change coming about because of those two very important things that are happening right now, this moment?
I'll go ahead. I'm also, besides I do media and I speak at conferences all over the world about diversity and inclusion. It's a very personal topic for me, because growing up, a lot of the reasons why I got into travel and to want to do a TV show about travel was I didn't see anyone that looked like me at the time when I was a young girl. So I felt a need to do something and to be a representative of, just more diversity. I'm also the vice president of a nonprofit called Travel Unity, and we work with tourism boards and we work with the youth. And what we do is we talk about how we can build a more inclusive and diverse travel community. So for me, what's happening right now, it's not new. It's just being put to the forefront. And so Black Lives Matter will always matter forever and always. It's just everybody is becoming more aware of it now, and there needs to be more voices. And there's a lot of travel articles. It's not just the travel industry, but I've always felt that the travel industry needs to be more inclusive and diverse of the population that is out right now. So for me, I'm excited that there's a lot of momentum and that, you know, a lot of companies and brands and tourism boards are reaching out to, you know, to a lot of these talented people within the travel industry that come from all different backgrounds. So for me, I'm really optimistic that this will shift and hopefully change a lot of things in the future. As far as the pandemic, I feel like COVID-19 is uniting us as humanity. I feel like we realize that we're all in this together, kind of what Sarah was saying. It's like we are a partnership, you know, the businesses and the travelers, like we're all in this together, like let's work together. We all want to be healthy. We all want to be safe. But, you know, I think it's everything that's happening right now, as difficult as it is for a lot of people, myself included, it's bringing us together, and it's hopefully going to be better in the future.
Oh, awesome.
I think these two things have affected us permanently. The two issues you brought up, Dan. As far as the Black Lives Matter movement, we've taken a hard internal look. We've had some internal meetings. We haven't posted a whole lot because we felt like it's our job to be listeners right now and learners, and try to be humble, because I know I don't fully understand the situation. I can say that completely clearly. I grew up in a little town in Colorado that had whites and Hispanics, and that was it. There were no Black, no Middle Eastern, no Asian, zero. So knowing that I grew up in that environment, I'm sure I missed stuff. And so I'm, as the leader of our company, I'm doing a lot of introspection, listening to my friends who are smarter and more aware on the subjects. And so I think for us, it will be the beginning of some changes for us. The pandemic put everything completely upside down. And we had, the two things that supported our organization the most, membership and events, slowed or stopped completely. And suddenly the ancillary things that we did, technical advising, online education, we were really glad that we had some other muscles that we could develop more, because in the past, sometimes we would look at that and say, maybe we're spread too thin. Now I'm so glad that we developed some other skills, because if we had only focused on events and membership, it would be a really, really grim outlook for us. So, I mean, it's changed everything. The two Black Lives Matter movement and the pandemic will never be the same. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It's a hard thing.
Thank you, Shannon. That was great. The Transformational Travel Council, we're split up into 4 houses in one community in terms of how we approach and study travel. We've got this goal of connecting with self, and self-realization and enlightenment. We have the other house of bridging and free seeing and connecting with others. This is where the cross-cultural connections come in. Then we have connection with something bigger. So, with nature, with the infinite, with source. And then the last house being, how do you make mindful choices after having experiences that have a positive impact on you, your family, community, and humanity as a whole. So with the bridging house and the work that we're doing there, we've already been on this path of really understanding that we're not going to be able to see change in ourselves or change in travel until we look within and we start to wrap our heads around identity and race and privilege and justice. And so, before even this unfolded, we had a committee in place specifically for this issue that we're facing in travel and across humanity. And so this has just accelerated that process for us. And it's super powerful. As bridge builders, us in the travel industry, we're bridge builders. We really have to take this opportunity to improve the travel dynamic from the inside out.
Very good.
I'll say from ATIA's perspective internally, I think that with travel businesses, I think that we shouldn't be afraid to have those uncomfortable conversations, and that this is the time to talk with our friends and partners and all involved in the travel industry and ask the questions. And as Shannon said, be listeners, but also to not ignore the conversation and sit back and watch what's happening, I think is unacceptable. And I hope in times of crisis, and this is a crisis for communities, you know, becomes, I think that in the recent news, it's been really highlighted how this is a life or death situation for many people across the world. So to not have that conversation, and they're uncomfortable conversations for sure, but to not have those, I think, is unacceptable. And then my hope is that in times of crisis, and we've seen from, you know, in history, that what comes out of that is significant change, community change, for the better, and I hope for that. As far as the pandemic, I also hope, to what you were saying, Shannon, that it does permanently change the way travel operates, that there are stronger partnerships with communities and travelers and businesses. I hope for that. I hope that in 10, 20 years, it's not going back to doing business as usual, which I also think sometimes we forget history. And so my hope is that this does permanently change, that we do better. And we are adapting now. We're in the middle of it right now. And that as we start to come out of it, I hope that those adaptations and improvements that we're making do stick and are solid and move forward in a way, a much better way.
Yeah, it feels like we're finally going to take some action on this change. It just crushes me that we're still dealing with these issues. You know, I've been on this planet 60 years, and it really hurts me to the core. And I'm going to use the podcast as an opportunity to give voice and a place for some of these conversations to happen. It's a good opportunity. I think a lot of different voices need to be heard. All need to be heard. All have to be heard. And it's a great opportunity.
Wow, good words. I don't have anything to add to the pandemic. Black Lives Matter, though, man, it has to stick. It just frickin' has to stick. Rick, you took the words right out of my mouth. I took a social media break for over a month, and I came back early this month and was just shocked. I mean, I'd heard obviously what was going on, but to see the response socially, you know, I think each of us, we all in travel everywhere, not just in travel, have to make a commitment that this is not another words only event, that we change forevermore. And I think that's, I get a little emotional. This just has to happen. And I think we all know this. And boy, I don't want to be guilty 5 years from now of having some posting up online or on our website that becomes meaningless, because that's just happened way too much. And I think it's a root core thing. And I believe travel can actually be one of the areas, because travel has been so inclusive, that we can lead this charge as an industry. And when I say that, I mean in real change that lasts.
You're so right, Dan. A quick personal anecdote. My father, who passed away a couple of years ago, would always talk about how Israel was always right and Palestine was always wrong. And I recognize I'm having an uncomfortable conversation right now, but I'm going to go for it. And he held very strong views on this issue. Palestine could do no right. And at our summit in Scotland in 2010, my parents came to it, and Palestine sponsored the breakfast. And as I was walking to the conference, I saw my dad talking with the gentleman from Palestine. And now I'm going to get emotional, but it changed everything. It changed everything. This man was so kind, and my dad got to know him. And the conversation around the dinner table around Israel and Palestine changed. And that's the power of travel. When you go and you meet other people who are very different than you, who you may even hold deep prejudices against, suddenly you meet them and it's never the same. So I believe in the power of travel done right. It can be done wrong too. Obviously, we see a lot of it done wrong, but that's why I think this community, the thoughtful travel community, has such an important role in the future.
Yeah, and I'd say we really have to shift this into the conversation we have with our clients. This is a primarily American, white American group that we have here, and our audience is primarily American. And we've grown up with racism. It's in the air that we breathe. And if we're really going to start breaking down the walls between us, we have to it starts with going within and being introspective, and understanding that there are perception and biases that have just been conditioned or programmed into us. And, this is where travel can take a step forward and guide these conversations, no matter how they might be.
And I would say from a media perspective, I feel that it's important to speak to the youth, colleges, internships, scholarships, study abroad, encourage people to travel as young and as much as they can. My family's from Mexico. They came in the 80s to the US, but I was born here. So I have two cultures, but I can relate in so many ways when people would have these prejudices about Mexico. When I say, I'm going to Mexico, I would hear all the time, is it dangerous? Hotels? Are they going to kill you? And there's so much fear-based. And I was like, what? No, Mexico's a huge country. It's beautiful, full of just history and art. And I've heard several people here in the States tell me, I'm never going to Mexico because of one news story. And I work in media, so I understand. Mm-hmm. However, the news is one side, and that's why I like to travel on my own, because I see and I like people to travel so they can get their own experience. They can see for themselves. They can meet the locals, kind of like Shannon was saying. He met, someone from Palestine. Then he understood. He had a different perspective. Travel opens your mind. Travel is a beautiful spiritual human experience, and I think it's so important for everyone and anyone to have an equal opportunity to travel if they can. In America, I feel like it's a great time. It's a movement. It's not a moment. Like Dan was saying, this is never going to be the same. And Black Lives Matter is. Hopefully will always be a movement for the Black people here and all over the world. It's become a global movement. So I hope that the travel industry from within and outreach becomes more inclusive, more diverse, more voices from different ethnicities and cultures that can have a platform or a voice to share their stories is equally as important, and to start as young as possible.
So if I can just throw my oar in the water here as well, building on both Shannon and Jeannette, I too had firsthand experience. My parents are both Holocaust survivors, one surviving Auschwitz and one surviving Dachau. And I had the luck of being able to go to Germany a few times on small ship cruises. And the last time I was there, I went by myself. And it was a real discovery for me about all the people and the culture. And I came back from those trips totally changed. And my most recent trip last year, I am a completely different person, and I have a different understanding of the history and of the culture and how personal everything is to everyone that lives there. It wasn't just about my parents. It was also about all of their experience. And I liken that to everything we do as adventure travelers.
Oh, wow. You know what we need to do?
Dan.
We need to get back together and have a webinar specific to these changes that we as an industry can be a part of leaving permanent frickin' change. And wow, I'm a little, thank you. I'm going to move on, but I'm not going to forget. None of us. I'm going to skip question 5 for those of you who are following along, because we've covered that a little bit. That has to do with more on the pandemic, but I'm going to jump to question 6. How are you and your teams feeling about your business and brand right now? Is it optimistic? Is it, I am just concerned? I am running mad. Where are you seeing your brands? Where are you seeing your companies in this environment that we're in right now as we go forward into living with COVID-19 for at least probably a year to 2 years.
I'm very optimistic. I think, as someone said before, all these things are causing us to come closer together and have these conversations we should have had 100 years ago. And I think that's exciting. I think it's up to each one of us to make sure that it sticks this time, and these conversations and the results that we have out of them, we implement some change and implement some action. But I think it's awesome. For me personally, it's an exciting time for podcasting because I think your voice is your most important superpower. I mean, people don't get the same interpretation of your words reading your blog. Maybe they do on a video because they can hear you talk, but when they hear your voice, they hear the passion and the excitement and the inflection. It's just awesome. So use your voice to get out there and let's change the world.
I would say,
Go ahead, Jeannette.
I would say, what is, remind yourself, what is your why? Why do you do what you're doing? Why are you in this business? Why are you your brand? Who are you? I think it's always important that Simon Sinek did that amazing TED Talk about know your why. And for me, my why has always and will always be the traveler. For me, uniting the traveler and uniting people through travel. So happy right now during COVID pandemic, I still have the same mindset about what's in the best interest for the traveler. And I've even told, and I'm also a travel advisor, I've also told people who want to go on trips, and I've said, honestly, I think you should postpone. I don't think it's a good idea. I see a lot of travel conferences and things like that, and I do my own workshops and events. I've taken many financial hits, but that's okay because in the end, I want what's best for people. I want what's best for me. So I always put the person, people, client, traveler, best interest before business. I always do that, and it may be the long, slow, difficult route, but for me, it's always the best. So.
And I'm feeling very, very positive about the influence and the effect that freelance travel writers and influencers have had along with the industry in terms of keeping people motivated, inspired, the beautiful places that exist out there, the real desire to go back, and now is even more time than any to double down on that. To really sharing our feelings for travel and how important it is and all the benefits of traveling. So I'm feeling very positive.
I'd say that, we've all been in a cave, right? It's been a dark period. And if you're not recognizing that, then more trouble than you think. But we've been shattered. A lot of our businesses have been shattered. But with that, that destruction is the only way we can have construction, right? And so for an industry, we have a real opportunity to rebuild and reimagine what this looks like and really guide it forward. And for the Transformational Travel Council, Transformational Travel is already evolving into the conversation. Travel is already evolving in that direction. Now I want to put an R in front of it. It's a revolution, right? And the entire tourism industry is moving in this direction of more emphasis on connection and learning and growth and looking at outcomes. So what do we want out of this? And that drives the purpose. That gets to the why that Jeannette mentioned earlier. So I think there's tremendous opportunity for us, despite the very, very challenging, difficult times that we're in. We're all going to be better for it.
I'm overall optimistic, Dan. I also, at the ATTA, we're hearing, from thousands of people within our membership. So I want to acknowledge that there are a lot of businesses that are not going to make it through. And so it is, while we are optimistic as an industry overall, I'm very sad for those who have watched the thing they built their whole life sort of crumble in front of them for different reasons, sometimes completely out of their control. So I also worry about some setbacks. So for example, the industry's been doing such a good job moving forward, reducing plastic. And now we run the risk of becoming very plasticized all over again, single-use plastic water bottles, individually wrapping everything. So I worry about those things. However, this pandemic has at least temporarily solved over tourism and given destinations a moment to breathe and say, how do we want this to come back? Do we really want it back the same way? Or would we like to do it more thoughtfully, more inclusive, more environmentally friendly, protecting our social fabric, making sure that when a visitor comes, that what they leave behind is beneficial for us? So I am overall optimistic. And I also, again, think that the adventure industry is positioned well. But it's going to be an endurance game, isn't it? It's almost like a sprint and a marathon simultaneously, at least for me. And so we're going to have to figure out how to manage our own sanity to get to the other side of this, because it's going to be a while.
Yeah, I think, Shannon, you capsulized a lot in that we're all feeling. I think we all agree that we're optimistic by our nature, and we all know that the other option is destructive, right? In other words, we know we have to keep going forward regardless of what's happening with our business and this kind of thing. But I think that, you know, the way I look at it is, you know, we're going to be optimistic till we can't. And that means that we all keep moving forward and creating new companies in the way we are. I know one thing that I kind of look at is I've really enjoyed, we just finished a massive survey of our guests just prior to COVID-19 on what they were looking for, because we were kind of in the middle of what we call Reimagine UnCruise with our staff. And of course, COVID-19 and now Black Lives Matter, the movement there is just accelerating all those thoughts. And you know, one thing I keep thinking of is, you know, our guests were asking for more inclusion. They were asking for more wilderness, meaning even a company like us that runs small boats, they don't want any ports. They want adventure. And, you know, so sometimes it's when we look at our brand, it's re-envisioning that and fine tuning it. And I think it's great to hear that we're all headed down that direction. As we look today at destinations, we've already mentioned how a lot of destinations are kind of quiet. We have the opportunity to kind of right size in a way, but could you go further with that? And are there specifics you could talk about in destination wise that you see as potentially opportunities in this environment going forward based on the fact of COVID-19 and what, as we talked earlier, kind of the idea of asking permission and being in more exclusive places? Any comments on that at all?
I think destinations are in a tough spot, and I think companies are in a tough spot, because as this reopens, the urge is going to be to do whatever it takes to get business moving again. And so discounting will most likely become a part of the story, and that, you know, is going to make it an even longer recovery for destinations. I think it's going to take incredible vision and willpower for everybody to say, I'm going to continue to build towards the right direction and not be tempted to take the quickest, easiest way back to recovery. And we internally here, we've also been thinking more about resilience versus recovery. Of course, we need to recover. Our own organization needs to recover. But we're trying to think about it in the framework of, could this happen again? Could something else happen? I mean, did any of us see this coming? I guess some did 10 years ago. As far as the pandemic. So I think I'm always encouraging, when we're in conversations with decision makers, just don't take the quick and easy route back. As much as that looks good, is let's build it back right. Let's control the numbers. Let's, you know, be responsible. Let's think about the climate. Let's think about the wildlife, the people. You know, how do we not exclude Indigenous people from the economic equation? How do they have a part of the story in the say? Those are a lot of big orders. So I think frivolous travel feels frivolous now to me. I feel like travel really needs to be purposeful, passionate, not preachy or shrill. I'm not, you know, nobody wants to go on vacation to be hammered down. But how do we do this right going back? And so that's why, you know, we gain inspiration like from organizations like the Transformational Travel Council and others out there that are just constantly carrying those flags.
Dan, I agree with Shannon in that I hope we can get back to talking about some of those complex issues of, you know, how to tourism. I know from my perspective in talking with Alaska businesses, we're still in it. There are still businesses trying to survive. And so to even shift the focus to talking about some of those bigger issues just doesn't, I mean, right now doesn't seem reality from my perspective. A business is trying to figure out how to get through the next couple months and even to recover into next year and beyond. Again, I guess echoing Shannon, I hope we can get back to that, and that as we're adapting right now, that those translate into conversations or continuing conversations about climate change and about managing tourism. But right now, I'm hearing businesses that are still trying to figure out how to pay their boat loan or how to refinance, you know, their lease, and they're still in it. I know it's been 3 months, seems like forever, but 3 or 4 months since we've been hunkering down or in different areas of you know, quarantine, and we're in Alaska. I would say for the most part, we're still in it, and we're trying to think forward and what that means coming out of and recovering and coming out of the pandemic. But there, I would say in Alaska, we're still in it.
I'd say that, you know, destinations, it's a time to unify, you know, the solidarity, you know, come together, get away from some of these bad habits around competition, you know, get all the stakeholders involved, you know, build it from the bottom up, you know, really focus on local community and community empowerment, let them guide that interaction, that conversation, and rebuild those ecosystems, you know, so they can support and guide, you know, that passionate, purpose-driven traveler in this new travel dynamic.
I also don't think that travel, it will be an issue. I feel like travel will become a more intimate experience due to COVID. Even here in Los Angeles, they just started slowly reopening restaurants, for example. I went to a restaurant yesterday for the first time dining in Los Angeles, and the whole experience was different. They took my temperature at the door. They checked to make sure you're okay. And then you have to wear face masks to go, but you can't eat with a face mask. I mean, maybe you could, but I mean, you know, it's a different experience and something so small, but also these restaurants, for example, are just trying to survive. Here locally, even hotels that have been closed here in Los Angeles, today, they're just reopening. So that is going to be a whole new experience for travelers. So I can speak from the local level here, what's been going on. Everything is just changing, but I feel like the traveler experience will forever be changed. But I'm with Sarah that, you know, just trying to help. You know, for me, I want to go to a local restaurant, a small business, for example, to support them at least once a week, being here in LA, for example, or going to do a staycation, or going to doing something that can also help our local economy, which I think is what a lot of people are starting to do locally first or domestically, and then thinking internationally, probably in the future when they feel, you know, safer to travel outside.
If I can kind of add on to a few of those comments, hopefully my internet stays stable enough you can hear all of it. But I think to some of what everyone has been saying, one of the things that we've been focused on is kind of how do you support the local businesses and destinations right now. And we've seen a lot of companies pivot. And one of the Alaska examples is a food tour company that ended up doing like a subscription box service so that people and it could be mailed to their homes, and still kind of get a taste of Alaska, and it's still supporting the local businesses and community. And there are a lot of other examples we've seen, whether it's the virtual tours. We highlighted a company called Invisible Cities that works with guides that have been affected by homelessness. And so if you're taking a virtual tour of Edinburgh, you're still supporting this community. And these guides who need that income. There are a couple of other examples I'm trying to think off the top of my head. But yeah, we've definitely been talking a lot about that, of the businesses that are still in it. There are ways that they're seeing kind of support, and, you know, actually there was a company in Colombia that was putting goats on Zooms, and that was kind of providing income for them in this time, even though their hotel was shut down. So it's been interesting and pretty neat to see all of that.
That's great statements on all of this, you guys. It's all so true, isn't it? Listen, we are coming up on an hour together, which thank you for spending this time, and I want to honor your time. I know we are all on pretty rapid schedules, but we'll do one last closing rapid thing. Give me 10 seconds as we leave, that's your takeaway for the listeners as far as travel and our discussion today. So give it a 10-second whirl, and then I'll close up here in a moment. Just as you are, come forward. I'm not going to call you out. You're making me want to call you out.
I'll go ahead and start. I feel my biggest takeaway from today's discussion is I feel more optimistic, more united. I feel not just in the travel and tourism industry perspective, as a humanity, I feel like we're all in this together, and we all want, you know, transformation, movement. We all want so many great things. So I really feel more unified, especially during this discussion. I feel like we're all on the same vibe. So thank you all.
And I would say that that my greatest takeaway from all of this is that I will never take travel for granted again, ever. It's something that I've done, and I, like others, have not spent a lot of time at home most of the time. I've had a lot of time now to think about it and think of the way forward and reimagine how I'd like travel to be. From Dan, from your perspective, I really hope that we can all get back onto those boats and not have much of the experience that we've grown to love aboard the small boats sacrificed as we try to move forward and open. And so I thank you for the opportunity to be part of this today.
Thank you.
I think for me, the takeaway here is just what a powerful community this can be. We all come from different spots in the industry, and yet we had a thoughtful, vulnerable conversation today about the hard things. And it strikes me that although many of us have our friends tell us, oh, you're in a really fun industry, which is true, it's also, it can be a world-changing industry. And it, you know, it has to be all of us, and we have to be brave and continue to do travel right.
You know, I'll echo somewhat of Jeanette's comments that, you know, what I'm taking away from whether it's Black Lives Matter or the pandemic is that we're in this right now, but that coming out of crises could be a real opportunity for systemic change, and to be part of that in some way is really powerful. So I'm going to take that with me and focus on those kind of opportunities from what can be created out of crisis.
Yeah, I echo that too. I think it's, you know, it's us. It's us, it's the destinations, it's the planet, it's the animals, it's the environment. We're all in it together. And if we don't take care of us, we have nowhere to go. So that's what I take away from this. And just, I would encourage everybody to stay engaged, stay aware, stay calm, and get outside as much as you can. Keep your head clear.
Yeah, I'll add on to that too. One of the things that we always talk about is that innovation has to be consumer driven. And as we're all kind of witnessing now, people are fed up and we can make the, and it has to start with us. And so, you know, it has to, we have to talk about diversity in that way. We have to talk about sustainability in that way. But I think that if the travel industry is going to change, it all has to start with us.
Yeah, I'd say that it's clear how incredibly resilient, you know, everybody is, you know, with this space and with this group, and the hope that I get, you know, from that, and the optimism that I get from that, and the vulnerability that Captain Dan you showed. You know, it's inspiring for sure.
Well, my 10-second takeaway: freaking blessings to you. Thank you. Today's been good. It's a start. We can change our world and maybe affect the rest of it. And at the end of the day, all the things we're doing to save our businesses and have a new future become minuscule compared to that. Our businesses, our groups are all tools that we use to make that change. But you know, at the end of the day, we all want to end our days on this planet knowing we did the right thing. And I'm just super inspired that all of us here in this group want to do the right thing. We want to find that path. Oh gosh, I get leaky eyes on these kind of talks, you guys. But it's exciting. I shared the love that you all expressed about being together and a common goal. Jeannette, you brought that up very clearly, and in going forward. So I look forward to other times. Maybe we'll meet at a local pub someplace. Maybe we'll be back here on Zoom, but I deeply appreciate you all. Thank you very much. And Liz, are there any closing statements from you at all?
Yeah, I've got a few, but if we could just take one moment, I think we've got time for one question, kind of a little theme that's been going. If you could just quickly throw some information out there, maybe this is for Sarah and yourself, Dan, about the Alaska testing and quarantine for restarting. Real quick.
Sarah, I'll just start real quick and say, we at UnCruise Adventures believe that we have to have testing before you can get on our ships. We just believe that in order to have freedom on board, that we have to have testing. So regardless of what the state of Alaska does, we're going to be doing that. And I know other small ship companies feel the same, because to really kick off our product, we have to be, there are times we have to be closer. So we need to know, we need to have assurance through testing. Sarah, maybe you could speak to the Alaska state part of this.
Yeah, and to do it really quick, and I will try, but maybe the real quick answer is to point you to what is becoming more and more clear steps on the state's COVID-19 /travelers website. But there are 4 options now for travelers to arrive in Alaska. There's the 72-hour and then up to 5 days. If you're able to obtain a test, you can arrive before boarding a plane and arriving in Alaska. If you have your test results, you'll be asked to test again. And then while you're awaiting those results, you can go on your trip. If you don't have your test results with you, you also do have to test again, but you have to quarantine of your test. There's still the 14-day quarantine option. So if you're able to build that into your trip and you're unable to obtain a test somewhere, you can choose to spend 14 wonderful days in Alaska and then go off on your trip. That's quick in a nutshell. I know that the state really tried to roll out something that was balancing reopening to support businesses, but with the safety and health in mind of Alaskans, as in Alaska, we do really rely sometimes on lower 48 health infrastructure for some of our communities. It goes Anchorage, Seattle, and then beyond. So I think it is an authentic or sincere effort from the state to in some way try to balance that. And I know Alaska is being looked at a little bit as a test case in these testing procedures. But the quick way to go is to look at their website, the state's website. They kind of have a 4 or 5 step process.
Blessings to all. Thank you very much. And let's get together and talk about social justice and Black Lives Matters at another time, huh? We need to carry on and make sure that's real.
Hey, Dan, there's a Black Lives Matter march, silent march in Seattle today. I'll see you there.
1 o'clock.
Yes. All right.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you, Dan.
Love ya.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
Dan.
Sarah.
Thank
Thanks,
you,
everybody.
everyone. We do expect to have this recording up as soon as possible, so we encourage you to go ahead and also check out each of our panelists' websites individually to find out more about them. And if you have more specific interests or questions for UnCruise Adventures, please feel free to forward that to pr@uncruise.com. Thank you, and we will see you out there traveling again. Have a great day.